I don't know whether you've had time to look at all 101 pages since yesterday afternoon, but does this look like a deal which is keeping everybody happy? We're still, as Darren said then, a cautiously optimistic reception from Jeffrey Donaldson and the DUP, but maybe they're not completely on board at this stage.
Yes, well, good morning. I've been burning the midnight oil looking at the minutiae of this framework. And at this point in time, just after coming up to 10:30, I would say the framework has now become the battle of the spin doctors. Based on what we've been listening there from the Prime Minister, for him, the framework represents the unconditional surrender of the European Union to Westminster. However, as other commentators have said, if we go by the hardliners in the unionism and the Tory party, is this merely the old protocol but with a few festive baubles added onto it? Because the key aspect of it all is it has to restore the peace process. And Stormont, as a functioning assembly, has got to come back. If it doesn't, then basically what we're looking at is no more than Sunak's soggy sausage deal. And we don't want that. But let's look positive here. I think that what it is overall is a rebooting of the UK-EU relationship. And this is going to be vital because the one thing that the European Union doesn't do is multitask. And as the Prime Minister recently alluded to there, we still have the problem of Russia and Putin in the Ukraine. So basically, if we can get this protocol sorted out and Stormont restored and the peace process functioning very, very effectively for the benefit of all the people in Northern Ireland, then the EU and the UK can focus on getting Putin out of Ukraine and rebuilding that country. This is the reason why I suppose there is, as the Prime Minister says, this 3% or what you might call minimum necessary, I think is the phrase he's used to describe EU law still relating to Northern Ireland. You have to give the EU something. In other words, Sunak is helping to bail out the EU because if it is seen as a complete whitewash, if it is seen as a complete, as I've said earlier on, the unconditional surrender of the EU, well, you've got Eurosceptic lobbies in other countries, and they might be saying in Poland, in Italy, and in Hungary, we want our own framework. And that's the big danger that the EU has to avoid.
John, what if the DUP, if Jeffrey Donaldson does conclude that, as you call it, it's Sunak's soggy sausage deal, and they won't go back to Stormont and re-establish the assembly there, what happens then?
Well, the onus is then on unionism. Does it have an alternative? We're almost back to a situation of 1974 when the Ulster Workers' Council strike pulled down the Sunningdale executive. Unionism had absolutely nothing to replace Sunningdale with in 1974. So that Sir Geoffrey, any of the hardliners in unionism, in the other parties, loyalism in particular, they've got to avoid a situation where if they decide they can't bring their party with them, if they decide they're going to lose a massive amount of seats or not gain seats in May's council elections, and they decide to put the gun to the head and pull the trigger of this framework document, what is their workable alternative from that point of view?